two seemingly unrelated things just coincided. One was an email from somebody whose employer had booked me to run an online wellbeing session, and they followed it up with an email asking me a specific question about email overload and some tips and things around that, because we hadn't specifically talked about that in the session. I thought, I must reply to that email. Then what happened just now is I was all ready for a Zoom meeting that didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Because it was in my diary, the date got changed, and I forgot to delete the original date. So I was all ready to be on camera, and I thought, I may as well make a little video while I'm all dressed up and ready to go. And so I thought, I could answer that email query. And then the collision happened. I thought, you know what? That email, one of my answers to email overload is to remember to delete the things that you need to delete, whether that's in an email or in your diary. So I also need to remember some of these things. So let's talk specifically, though, about email overload. And the very first and last thing that is the most important is that we take control. Don't let notifications and to-do lists and things sitting around like ugly frogs waiting to be sorted, do not let them control your schedule, your emotions, your concentration. So that's the first thing, and I'm going to be coming back to that at the end, because there's something even more specific that I'm going to talk to you about controlling and making sure it doesn't control you. Now, the first thing to realize in terms of emails, social media, lots of other things, anything that has a notification. I liken these to a tube of Pringles. You know, they have the advert, once you pop, you can't stop. Well, actually, that is true. The ingredients are such that you never feel fully satisfied, that you will just want to keep going until there's nothing left in the tube. There's lots of other junk foods that are similar to that. I say junk, I do eat them from time to time. What we need to realize is that they are made to make us want more. And so are those little dots or unopened envelopes that tease us into thinking, I wonder what's in there. And we get addicted. And it is an addiction to opening messages, checking messages, seeing notifications, all of these things. So what do we do about that? One of the things that you can do is make sure that you don't get notifications. And this is part of taking control, that you go and check your messages when you want to, when it's convenient for you. More on that later. If you get something that pops up and goes, something has arrived, we just automatically as human beings go, there's something to be solved. And if you are a bit of a superhero on the fixing front, you're going to be even more tempted to just jump in and try and solve that problem. You want to know what the issue is so that you can solve it. It's a natural instinct. That's how games and social media platforms get us hooked, because we want to see what it is. We want to sort it out. So if you have things that come up on your laptop to say there's a message while you're doing something else, switch off those notifications. It will not be that urgent that it can't wait until you've decided to go and check those messages. If it is, then you'll probably get a phone call. Something else will happen if it's that urgent. Remember, we didn't used to be available 24/7 in the way that we are now, and it can wait. Wait until you are ready to receive it. Switch off all notifications from social media, notifications on your phone, stop them coming up on your closed screen. All of those things just set us off into a bit of a stress response. So take control, decide what notifications you get or don't get. The next thing is this issue of multitasking, doing one thing and then being pulled in another direction. Now, if you're getting notifications, that's going to happen more often. What we need to do is focus on one thing for a certain amount of time. It doesn't have to be the whole day, but you focus on one thing and one thing only until you've got to the end of it or the end of the time that you've set aside for it. What we can't do is multitask. So you cannot listen to a podcast or be You've got a webinar running in the background while you're writing an email. You cannot do those two things at the same time. Yes, you can walk and chew gum. Yes, you can probably sing while you cook. You could maybe even listen to a podcast while you cook. But you can't do two things at the same time that require your whole brain. So you can't be listening and concentrating and thinking about what you're writing or doing or saying at the same time. Multitasking in that sense is a myth. The brain can only do one thing at a time. So what happens is we're zipping between one thing and another, which is very tiring and can give you a bit of brain fog and make you feel very stressed. So one thing at a time, don't try and multitask. Now, you may be working from home at the moment, or you have been working from home. And one of the very important things I want to say about that is job creep. Now, I don't mean the creepy person at work. I mean the way that work and home starts to blur. And because you put the washing out first thing, or because you spent a little bit of time on a personal issue, you think, well, I better work a bit later, a bit longer. If your work computer is still switched on in the evenings, you think, may as well check some emails. Stop right there. This job creep, this blurring of work and home is worse than ever before. Set a time when you're going to finish and keep that rule. Recognize that why you keep checking or you work for longer is sometimes that addiction. You might have an addiction to serotonin, which is the chemical that gets released when we have a sense of progress and success. Or you might just have that addiction to, here's a notification, I better go fix that. So you decide. You can't be on 24/7. You decide what you react to, and you decide when to stop working and when to start enjoying. Now, in email expertise, there are so many things you can do. I'm not an email expert. You can Google these kinds of things. You can do a little webinar and learn how to organize your email. But just a heads up, you can do things like setting rules so that each time a message comes in from a certain person or with a certain word in the subject title, that it will set it into a folder. That means that you will address that folder when you've decided to, rather than everything coming up and your inbox being just a huge dumping ground. So think about setting up folders. Think about having things go into certain places that you'll come to as and when you're ready. Think about the Stephen Covey principle of thinking about what's important and what's urgent as two separate things, because everything will seem important and urgent if you're in a stress mode and you're just trying to firefight and do everything. Have a look, think, do I really need to do that right now? Or does it just feel like, oh, it'll feel very satisfying to get it out of the way? So think about important and urgent. The other thing to think about is how many things are you subscribed to that you don't read, that you don't find useful, that actually just clog up your box. So sounds like a euphemism, not meant to be. So have a look, unsubscribe from things you don't really need, that you don't really use. I've been unsubscribing from things like hotels and holiday places. I think as and when we unlock sufficiently to go on holiday, I will just go look for those things. I don't need all of this stuff cramming into my inbox. Delete things when they're sorted. You don't need to hang on to everything. If you are a bit of a hoarder, you save that box or you save that little thing because you might use it one day. Delete the things that you've sorted and that you don't need to keep. That's going to help it feel less cluttered. When your inbox feels cluttered, when your desk feels cluttered, when the room feels cluttered, when your to-do list feels cluttered, your mind will too. So clear out what you can. Now I'm coming on to the very last point that I alluded to at the beginning, and that is decide when you are going to do your emails. Set aside time and do it then and only then. Now, it might be once a day, it might be twice a day, it might be 3 times a day. It needs to be what's appropriate for you with the kind of work that you do, the kind of things that you might be responding to in those emails. You decide how many times, but that's all you do. You don't look any other time. You concentrate on other things. Set aside time for looking at your emails and responding to those emails, or filing the ones that you're going to sort out later or that you're going to delegate. And if you've got something creative to do, if you've got something that you want your full brain power for, do it first. One of the traps that we fall into is we check our email before we do anything else. We think, oh, well, we'll just clear that away. It's like washing the pots before you cook again. But that's not how it works with email. You start reading your emails, it drifts. There's something you then start to respond to, and that takes more time than you realized. And before you know it, a lot of time has gone and you've kind of lost the energy and the impetus to do something creative and wonderful. So do the good stuff first. Allow yourself to eat your pudding first before you get onto the vegetables. So some things about email hygiene. You need to take control is the most important thing. I hope you have fun instead of feeling swamped by your emails. Remember, you are in control.